Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so glad to be here. Really honored with this invitation, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time today to be here with us. And my hope is that at the end of this conversation, we'll have a lot of Q&A so that we can talk a little bit about this important issue. When I confirmed that I was going to be here, I didn't really know that today would coincide with the release of the Gang of Eight bill about comprehensive immigration reform. So it's really taking place at a time when a lot of the work that we've done in the past years finally come to fruition. There was a time, even a year ago, when the idea of comprehensive immigration reform was received with very lukewarm, sometimes very, kind of polite smile, but the idea was, no, we're not going to get there. It was against the backdrop of a time when all we heard about was enforcement, deportation, and of course Arizona came up with their own law of racial profiling as an answer to the immigration problem, which meant that it would go after anyone who was of minority origin. And today we are at a point where, for the first time in 5 years, it was really 2007, that there was a major attempt to overhaul the immigration system here under the late Senator Kennedy. But that didn't go anywhere because his partner, Senator McCain, simply moved on to the right and forgot about the comprehensive immigration reform efforts. But what this represents today is an attempt to provide 11 million people with the opportunity to move from the shadows, to participate in this great democracy, to be able to call this place home. And this particular phenomenon comes at a very critical time when we have witnessed the emphasis on deportation, fragmentation of communities, and as such, it represents a tremendous victory. But the question really is, how did we get here? And why is it that it's now and not last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago? And I'm sure that future historians, political scientists, anthropologists, and sociologists, and in fact activists, would seek to answer this question, especially when we're talking about a group of people who don't have the right to vote, sometimes don't even have the legal option to drive because they never had driver's license. In other words, they were not a political constituency enough to make anybody care. Talking about 11 million people who just existed there. Well, the reason is that the immigrant community, especially in the last 2 decades, saw the need to organize and mobilize and to build political power. And this has been a long process, and it happened against the backdrop of one of the most successful social movements of the 20th century, which is the civil rights movement, which brought together so many people and in the process really helped to make this nation a more perfect union. And a lot of that lesson of struggle of people, either for the right to vote or the right to live where they wanted to live, the right to move around, etc. In other words, the fight against segregation and the strategies that came out of that movement of bringing different faith groups together, bringing people of different classes, different racial groups together to fight for a common vision. That lesson informed this new movement called the immigrant rights movement. And as such, when you look at Illinois in particular, we saw several attempts to build power in immigrant communities to ensure that ultimately we're able to move both the politics and the public relations part of the struggle. Because we're talking about a group that, for a long time, the Tea Party folks, it was like just deport them all, as if it was easy to send 11 million people out of the country. The case of Illinois is very unique in the sense that here we have the most significant statewide attempt by immigrant leaders to build the infrastructure for civic engagement and activism in a very progressive manner. Here we saw that the first attempt at building multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multi-faith coalition to address the status of the undocumented in our community started to gain root, and especially in the late 1990s. After the Welfare Reform Act of 1996 under Bill Clinton, there was an attempt to basically deprive immigrant communities of access to services. That was the time when they said, well, you are here, you can't be eligible for medical assistance, unless maybe you're really about to die, and then would allow you in, and disconnected them from the network of services that we consider to be just part of a liberal democratic society. That there got to be safety net for people. But somehow, as a result of welfare reform of 1996, there was an attempt to simply shut out undocumented immigrants. That helped to galvanize the community in a way that we didn't see before. Suddenly, there was an awareness that it was important to build a multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-faith coalitions of people from different backgrounds to work together to address the systematic dismantling of the social network that was there to help people to access services, to be eligible for programs, whether it was housing or medical assistance or some kind of access to ESL programs, etc. So that galvanization of the immigrant community helped to lay the foundation for a lot of the activism that we saw later on, 5 years down the road by 2003. And in 2003, what happened was that suddenly there was an awareness that we're having undocumented children in the community who were going through high school but suddenly couldn't go to college. And even when they went to college in Illinois, they couldn't really pay the tuition because they were regarded as international students. So they were undocumented, had access to no scholarship, etc., and of course, no possibility of moving forward in achieving their dreams. So that question helped to bring together various groups. And for the first time, we started bringing the Latinos and Asian Americans and Muslim communities and others to come together around this kind of struggle to offer access for undocumented students. And we became the first state to have in-state tuition for undocumented immigrant kids. So for the first time, immigrant youth were able to access education. And that meant that they were able to move beyond just the high school, and more importantly, made college education affordable. It was not perfect, but it was a significant victory. And what that victory did was to demonstrate the importance of building these large coalitions. And suddenly we also recognized that in order to move any particular piece of policy, we have to build power. We have to educate the community at large. We have to start to talk about civics. We have to let people understand Springfield 101, as we say in the business, which means that you have to know your state legislators. You have to know your state senators, your state representative. You have to know who in your own neighborhood, in your own community, can help you move that person to vote yes on the issues that matter to us. So that was the beginning of a very successful effort to build the most sophisticated infrastructure in the U.S. today. We are part of a larger coalition called the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, which invested significantly in this process of building the infrastructure for all immigrant groups, irrespective of their background. And what that did was, for the first time, legislators started to take note of this community. They started to realize that it looks like they represent number, and every politician knows how to add 1 + 1. If you can't add, you can't be in the business of winning elections. And we also drill it down to look at certain districts to figure out how best to target our political work. Getting people to register to vote, those who are eligible to vote. Getting those who are registered to vote to the poll. And slowly, we started to see the immigrant rights movement flexing its muscles. And a lot of the significant policy achievement, the legislative victories we achieved over the last 10 years here, from 2003 to now, to January, and I'll go through some of those achievements, showed the maturing of this process, this phenomenon of engaging communities irrespective of their status. What we recognized was that in the business of developing our civic programs and building the infrastructure to build power within our community, it was important to bring in also the undocumented in this effort. In other words, this was a movement that was not designed around people doing something for the others. It was engaging those who were directly affected by the issues. But how did we transform a group of people who never had the courage, because of their legal status, to go out there and march, to pick up the phone and call their legislators, to participate in training programs, to go out there and help to knock on doors, and to educate their own communities about the importance of advocacy, of activism? Well, it was a slow process. As I said, it was really a decade of struggle, basically. And one of the things that we started to do was to do the voter education. So every election cycle, we had the New American Democracy Project, NADP. NADP became the vehicle to train community leaders, to know the ABC of politics, to know how to reach out to your constituents. More importantly, to demonstrate your power to those who are going to decide the fate of the community in Springfield. So what we did was to develop a nonpartisan political education program. And one of the first things we did was to establish a candidate school. The idea behind the candidate school was to ensure that we were training future leaders, that it was not enough to just have allies in the House and the Senate, but that we should start to train the next generation of immigrant leaders. Those who are here, they are citizens, they can vote. We wanted to build their leadership capacity so that ultimately they could actually contest and, in a few cases, win. And the fact that we were getting the community to see its own power that way helped to transform the social consciousness of this community. To know that, you know what, we are not just passive observers in a system that is shaped by those who are anti-immigrant. Rather, we are in a system that we can build power and transform the political system and help to change policies and along the way, help to change minds and hearts. So, Illinois consequently was described as the most immigrant-friendly state in the nation. That did not happen overnight. It happened because it became very clear to key decision makers that 20% of the population in Illinois, consisting of immigrants, had to play an important role in the civic life. In other words, in the politics of the state. And in building, pardon?
20% are immigrants?
Yes, of the population, yes, of Illinois, if you look across here, and very diverse. 1/5, thank you. Yes, 1/5, and that is
out of 5, yes.
Yes, and that is why I said that every politician knows how to add. If you can
Even
add,
if they cannot vote.
Even if they cannot vote, but you got to look at them as future voters. Every politician wants to grow the support base. And today, those who can vote may vote tomorrow. And it's better to make them your friends today, so tomorrow you don't have to run against them. Right? Because running against them takes a whole different set of resources. You know, if you start building the relationship now to say, I am not against you because of your status, while getting the vote of those in the community who can deliver something for you, then of course you are more likely to see this community as an asset. Right? And over time, we move on to a program called the New Americans Initiative, NAI. NAI was established under Governor Rod Blagojevich. It is a state-funded initiative aimed at encouraging legal permanent residents to become citizens. So we were in a situation in which we could provide services. We could provide free application processes, and more importantly, help to prepare our community about the importance of citizenship. So your comments there is very clear, because with that effort, we were able to help over 50,000 legal permanent residents become citizens. Yes? the last 5-6 years. That is a significant number when it drilled it down to district where the outcome of elections were shaped by sometimes 2,500 votes. Yeah. So if we could register people to vote, and more importantly, help legal permanent residents become citizens, that emboldened the immigrant rights movement. The activism that we saw in Chicago in particular, leading to the large marches you saw in 2006, 2007, where over 200,000 people were out in the street and marching downtown Chicago, that is the kind of result that we got out of this effort of not just building an infrastructure for immigrant rights, but more importantly, making sure that we connected that infrastructure to flexing our political muscle. So when you look at the immigrant rights movement, you see a movement that learned from the past, but also became very sophisticated. And we did that perhaps because we're dealing with a community where half of them could not do much because of their status. And so we needed to improvise, to bring together a different set of ideas. And one of the things that I want to really highlight in this effort in Illinois was the combination of several key elements, and I will talk about each of them briefly. It was the confluence of player vision, leadership, strategy, tenacity, and faith. Faith in the righteousness of the cause. When you are engaging in this kind of fight for social justice, you have to first believe that it is the right thing to do. It is not something you say, I feel like doing it. You have to say it is not right in a democracy to have 11 million people living in the shadows, afraid to come out, afraid to drive their children to school because they didn't have driver's license. It is wrong to have 11 million people without a sense that down the road they would be part of this society. And that sense of righteousness shaped most of our work here. But the overarching vision is part of the American narrative. The vision of, just like the civil rights movement, working together to create a more perfect union, to ensure that every one of us together are interconnected. I am my brother's keeper, I am my sister's keeper, and we need to work together to make life better for all. That those who came here did not come here out of just desire to come and be out of status or undocumented, came out of necessity and coming to contribute. And we got to look at immigrants and immigration as a positive, a net positive, rather than a negative. That vision shaped our work, and every time we took on some of the issues that I'm going to talk about here, the policy issues, they are all rooted in this overarching vision that we're seeking to make this democracy work for all of us here, irrespective of status, because no human being is illegal. The other thing is leadership. In many ways here, in the immigrant activism that we saw in the last decade, was really a reflection of bringing together the best minds from diverse backgrounds. Our movement brought together the best leaders in the Muslim community, in the Jewish community, bringing folks from Latino community, Asian American communities, all of us coming together to work around a shared vision. That meant that every time we gathered, we had the creme de la creme of people who were always struggling to make life better for their own specific communities. But because we had a shared vision, we could make connections. We could see where, in fact, an issue transcended one group of people. And in many ways, it educated other leaders about issues they wouldn't have known about or cared about. For example, in the immigrant rights movement, we understood that it was our duty as part of this faith in the righteousness of our cause to fight against Islamophobia, to educate folks about why we have to ensure that civil liberties for Muslims are as entrenched in our laws as the right of immigrants of other backgrounds. And at the same time, we work to ensure that there was no culture, no tolerance for anti-Semitism. In other words, when we started working together, we developed this common idea that we are together, irrespective of our backgrounds. And because we struggle every day to advance social justice for all of us, all of our communities, we develop a sense of respect for one another that made it easier for us to work around this shared vision. So leadership played an important role for our work here, for the level of activism and the victories that we secured over the last decade, unlike any other state, especially in the Midwest here. The other thing is just strategy. It is not enough to know what you are against or what you are for. You have to know how to get to where you want to go. Strategy is so important in this work, and the one strength of the immigrant rights movement here was our ability to understand the climate and the landscape that we operated under, to know that it was important to bring together traditional and non-traditional allies as part of a process of moving people, flipping votes, and achieving significant policy results. That meant that in some instances, we had to work with business, we had to work with clergy, we had to work with sheriffs and law enforcement. We had to bring all of this together to stand on the stage with us to say, this is the right thing to do. Because sometimes when you're just speaking to the amen corner, the people already with you, you can get some things done, but you can't really go far. But once in a while, you have to venture out. You have to bring in others who, on the surface, would not have anything to do with your issues. But when you bring them all to stand with you and get them to believe in the righteousness of your cause, it sends a message to those who may be against you, that in fact there is a broad coalition of support for this. And if they didn't support it because of you, they would support it because maybe they saw the archbishop, or somebody from the archdiocese here, or somebody, a rabbi standing there, or an imam. There got to be a way that you can get these people. And when you say, don't engage in racial profiling, let's stop this attack on immigrant communities, you bring in law enforcement person standing there with you to say, that's true, I don't need to waste my resources going after people who are driving and not causing any trouble. I should be going after criminals instead of people who just want to get to work. I don't want to use my resources that way. That sends a message to the most conservative group that, law enforcement says this cause is good. We should support. An example of that, the most recent example, and I'll work my way back to others, is the Illinois driver's license for all campaign. We started that fight about 7 years ago. It was so tough. There was a time when we went down to Springfield and we were speaking hard about why this was the right thing to do, but we couldn't move a single Republican vote. Even some Democrat look at us like, you want me to really give driver's license to undocumented? I'll lose the elections. Right? So they were acting out of self-interest. Well, after a while, we had to develop the kind of strategic framework that helped us develop what I call the onion approach, layers and layers of support. Figuring out, first of all, what was important in that district, who were the most important people there, and how could we network with those people to get to our targets. And so, when we realized that, a state representative in Lake County was not going to really support us because he was afraid of the reaction from law enforcement, we forgot about the state representative and went after the sheriff. And then we realized that, the sheriff actually goes to that Catholic church down the road from somebody's home. And we said, maybe we should talk to that somebody who can really talk to this person after Mass on Sunday. And say, by the way, my neighbor, you know that I came here undocumented. Oh, really? Well, we've been in the same church here and everything, and I didn't know that. I said, this is important to me and my son and my aunt. And humanize the problem and get that person to understand that, there are human beings behind these issues. In some instances, it was a simple case of saying, maybe for this particular representative, he's concerned about reaction of business in his district. Well, that was an opportunity for us to identify the big businesses in his district. And if there are big factories there, look for the owners of those factories and get one of the bank directors to stand with us and make phone calls. So over time, we were able to overcome this large mountain in front of us. And year after year, we refined the strategy. And so when we came out last year to push for driver's license, we knew it was the right moment because it was after November election and everybody understood, especially Republicans, that if they are going to have a future, they better prepare to embrace the immigrant and Latino communities. Because with more than 70% of Latino voters going for President Obama and more than 60% of Asian American votes going there, it was very clear to them that the math was not going to add up very well. And as I said, every politician knows how to add the math. So we smelled blood and we said this was the right moment and we went after it. We started with a grass top strategy, work our way down, getting the leaders of the different caucuses, the Republican caucus, Bill Brady and others to say, got to support this issue. This is not a Democratic issue. It's not a Republican issue. It's just the right thing to do. Well, for the first time, they agreed with us. And not because, before they didn't hear us say it was the right thing to do. It's because they understood that this was an issue that was not going to go away. And for the Democrats, they need to maintain the majority. For the Republicans, they have to aspire to becoming a majority party. So we developed different strategies, forgot about going out there and say this is a social justice issue to, well, we have business here, we have faith communities here. By the way, we have a press conference tomorrow where we have one imam from the Council of Islamic Organization of Chicago, we have somebody from the Jewish League, and we have so many other people standing together, conservatives, evangelical, pastors, saying that this was the right thing to do and giving a biblical or faith-based approach to it. And you know what happened? We were able to slowly flip those Republicans who were opposed to it. And because we already had the infrastructure to mobilize people, and in the last election we got more than 138,000 people to the poll, we knocked on doors and got people out, they took notice of that. And so very soon, the majority leader in the Senate and the House came together, and guess what? We got a bipartisan support for driver's license for all. And today in Illinois, we are on the verge of making sure that anybody who is here and can drive will have driver's license. What that did was to send a message, an opposing message, that Illinois was not Arizona. In 2010, Arizona dominated the national narrative about, well, the answer is enforcement and send immigrants out. We sent some of the best organizers from Chicago down to Arizona to help build the capacity of the immigrant rights movement there because of the lessons that we had learned in our capacity. One thing that came out of that was that we needed to move to a state-by-state strategy because Arizona was clearly sending a message that states were not ready for comprehensive immigration reform. So we embarked upon a systematic series of actions here, and one of which, of course, was driver's license. But the other significant one was the Illinois DREAM Act. The Federal DREAM Act had stalled. Senator Dick Durbin couldn't pass it. Nearly 10 years of trying. But we saw an opportunity here that strategically, back to strategy, it was important to have a victory in Illinois to send a message that it's possible when you bring together people for a common sense solution to a problem that is there. It's not going to go away. We have immigrant youth in our communities who are smart. They want to go to college. They want to become the next generation of lawyers and doctors, and teachers and firefighters, etc. And maybe, even mayor. but they couldn't do that because they had no access to higher education. And so we created a bipartisan support for the Illinois DREAM Act, providing private scholarships for undocumented youth, giving them in-state tuition, and making sure that everyone who had the ability to go to college could go to college in Illinois. That helped to galvanize the national immigrant rights movement, because for the first time they could point at a success story to say, look at the home of Senator Dick Durbin, they have done it there, how did they do it? And the messaging around it helped to convince people in other states that it was time to put energy into achieving comprehensive immigration reform.
I have a quick question. Does the tuition that undocumented aliens can get, would the same person who was not an illegal alien, could he get that same amount of tuition?
Yes. Basically, what we're fighting for here is parity. We're not saying have special scholarship for undocumented youth. We're not saying give them a different status.
That would be very important.
Right. That's the issue of fairness, right? All we were saying was that it was not okay for a kid who came here at the age 2 or age 3. This is his or her home. Why prevent that kid from going on to college? Just because of their legal status. That was the argument. And when we were able to bring together a broad coalition of traditional and non-traditional allies to fight for this issue and got bipartisan support for it and defeated the Tea Party right here in Illinois, it sent a message to others that, this is doable. That if we are organized, we have a strategy for it, and we believe in the righteousness of our cause, that we can get these things done. The intractable public policy issues are easily solved when you bring people of goodwill together with leadership, or vision, and the tenacity to know that one setback is not enough to just derail you. Right? Just like the driver's license. We spent years, we lost vote, but we kept on going back. Until after a while it became clear that, we had the momentum. We didn't give up after the first defeat. Instead, we went back and said, where did we go wrong? So this last time around, you couldn't see me on TV talking about it because it was not me. We basically brought in non-traditional allies to do the talking, to appeal to those who were on the fence, who wanted to do the right thing, but they were afraid of the political consequences. We assured them by bringing others to the forefront, to fight and convince them that this was good. Just the decent thing to do, a common sense, practical solution, because we're not going to send these kids back to their respective countries. They are Chicago. Thank you very much. They are Chicagoans, so where are you going to send them, And the other thing that got us this level of success here as, immigrant activists fighting for social justice was the work we did to terminate secure communities. Secure communities was a program by the Department of Homeland Security in which they were compelling local jurisdictions to do the work of DHS, which is to say that if you are arrested for something, for driving without license, and you were taken to the Cook County Jail, and the next day the judge said, well, actually, just pay $200 bond and go home, they were authorized to keep you there if they recognized that you were here unlawfully, kept you there in time for DHS to arrest you for deportation, which we thought was unconscionable. Anyone going to jail and you have a bond, you should be able to pay the bond and leave. I mean, if you have felony issues, that's different. But to say that because somebody's here illegally and you're going to keep that person in jail for DHS to come pick them up and send them down to some place in Woodstock or downstate in Pulaski County, and after that put them on a plane to Mexico or Venezuela or Sierra Leone, it just didn't make sense, So we organized around that. And the way we did it was twofold. We had a state strategy in which we got the governor, for the first time, a sitting governor, writing a letter to the federal government saying that we are not going to be part of this program. It's not our job. But more importantly, we achieved a significant success by having the Cook County Board coming out strongly in support of this. Having somebody like Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle close to the president himself to say, Mr. President, I'm sorry, we can't do this. It's costing taxpayers money. When we keep these people in our jails, we are giving them beds that we need for others, right? And every day it costs us $150. Nobody is giving us that. It's an unfunded mandate. So we passed a resolution there to say Cook County was not going to participate in that effort. And suddenly, the momentum was there for us. And it gave courage to our allies in California. We saw our success here as an impetus to fight to end secure communities in California. And once we achieved that there, the whole system started unraveling. So in effect, what we have done here is to build the leadership capacity of immigrant communities, and not just those of us you see in the forefront, but we also help to build the capacity of immigrant youth. That is why the Immigrant Youth Justice League emerged, which was consisted of undocumented youth, marching and saying that we are undocumented and we are unafraid. Getting them out of the shadows to overcome their fears. To be the people now providing a face to the issue of the dreamers. It was one thing for us to say, let's pass the DREAM Act. It was a different thing to see these 18-year-olds and the 20-year-olds and going out there and marching and getting arrested at the Federal Plaza, downtown Chicago, going to the Capitol and standing there at Congress and say, arrest me, I'm undocumented, but this is my home. It changed the narrative. No politician wanted to be seen as one who was going to really round up young people to send them back to countries that they don't really remember. But we decided that the fight for the Illinois DREAM Act should now be connected to the fight for comprehensive immigration reform. And so, from November to now, we have been driving this process for the first time. The president came out after a few years of saying not sure, etc., but he read the numbers. The Republicans recognized that they needed to really take this thing off the table because they were about to become a permanent minority. And we also saw the Democrats with backbone and finally saying that it was okay to stand for comprehensive immigration reform and not be afraid of opposition from your right. So the chemistry that was needed to put together the ingredient for the passage of comprehensive immigration reform emerged just about 5 months ago. But it was something that reflected a long struggle, and in Illinois here, it was a level of immigrant activism that shaped that. This did not happen because somebody somewhere in Washington, D.C. just felt sorry for 11 million people. It was because politically it made sense to address the status of 11 million people. And moving forward, I see the immigrant activism as one that is going to be transformative, especially in Illinois here, as we start to see immigrant leaders running for public office, becoming aldermen, state reps, etc., even school council members. That is going to help deepen immigrant integration. And to me, this has always been a fight for immigrant integration, to reach the point where it shouldn't really matter whether you arrived yesterday or 20 years ago, but that if you are here and you are engaged in the civic life of this society, you are contributing, you should have a seat at the table. So on that note, I'll stop and take on.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Yes.
Every country has a right to protect their borders,
Yes.
and America gives enough rights to everybody
Yes.
to be documented people, like F1 visa, H1 visa, green card, and then citizenship.
Yes.
So why don't you help undocumented people for them to become a documented people, rather than giving them driver license or making them kind of legal. So don't you think America has the right to protect his border and kick out the immigrants which are undocumented and illegal?
Good question. In fact, the first thing that you hear from the president, and Senator Durbin, the Republicans, and the Gang of Eight is always about protecting the border. And that makes sense. That is the duty of government, you know. And I believe that protecting the border will help the future flow of undocumented immigrants. But let's look at it this way. 47% of those who are out of status today, undocumented in this country, did not cross the border from Mexico. They came here on F1 visa, on the 6-month B1, B2 visa, etc., 6-month visa, and stayed for 20 years. And that's because the immigration system was broken. It's broken right now. But it is not possible for you to sit out there and say that I'm going to apply to become an immigrant to the US with a green card. So people know that the easy way, especially if you are not south of the border here, is to go for the tourist visa and then come in and figure out a way. The challenge is that when people come in that way and they outstay their visa, they have no option. They can't really do anything else. Maybe down the road, they may marry somebody, but that's just a tiny percentage. Most of them stay in the shadows. So what we are talking about here is a common sense solution that says protect the border, put in $2 billion there. If you want to make it $7 billion, it's fine. It's okay. You can build a wall from Arizona to the moon, and hopefully that will keep out people, but I know it won't. We should put the money to education, But we agree to that. That's a language that will accept it. What we are saying is that provide a system that will help people know that if I go through this, I can go to the US as an immigrant. And one of the products of this particular bill now we're talking about is addressing that, making sure that while you sit in your home country, you can fill out this form, and it's a merit-based system. You have a degree in engineering, you get 20 points. You have English competency, you get another 15 points.
Canada has such a system, maybe. Do you know?
Yes, similar to that. Canada has. So they're trying to bring some rationality into the system. And we accept that, The reason why we keep on having this condition, it happened before 1986. Reform happened where it still had 3-4 million at a time. Now it's 11 million. Is because people do not have a system to go through. And I think this will address that, But clearly, border security got to factor into this. And they're going to also work on making sure that people don't overstay. Or if you overstay, there's no way that employers will give you a job. So if you don't have a job, you'll likely go back, But right now, the good news is that those who are here will have a path. And I think that is a common sense solution.
Thank you.
What's the next thing on your agenda?
After comprehensive immigration reform? Right. Well, when you have 11 million people on the path to legal status, then I think we have to address the issue of immigrant integration. Because it is not enough to say you have legal status. You got to build an infrastructure and people understand civics. They understand that you got to learn English. You cannot really be productive here if you don't learn English. You can speak any language at home, but English is the language of business, And we want to make sure that those who are here understands their rights, And so ongoing, I think, effort at immigrant integration must be sustained. And that is going to require a lot of creativity, and I'm sure that people come up with better ideas learning from the past. When you look at the last 3-4 peak periods of American immigration, when millions of people showed up from different parts of the world, whether it was the Irish potato famine or people from Eastern Europe, but there was a process to make them Americans.
But with the sequester and all of that, maybe immigrants will not want to come here anymore because it's just as lousy a country as the rest of them.
And let me tell you, America will always be a light on the hilltop. And I say that not because I'm here and I'm a citizen, it's because there's something really special about this country. If you look around the table here, you see it. People from different backgrounds, we come here, we say, okay, we all arrive on different ships, but we are on the same boat now. And we figure it out, as Martin Luther King said, we got to figure out a way to create the beloved community of all of us working together. And I think that America provides that for humanity more than any other country, in the sense that this is a country where you can come in. I see myself coming here, I arrived 21 years ago, and frankly, if I want to run for mayor tomorrow, governor, I can roll up my sleeve and do it. I can't dream that if I'm in England, or in Poland, or some other country. All countries are steeped in those traditions, and it's hard to break that mold. This country can give you that hope that you can come here with nothing. Like me, I arrived here with $40 in my pocket on August 10, 1991, and believe me, I have done it all. You know, I've worked in government, I have worked in academia here, and now I'm doing what I really love doing, which is fighting on behalf of marginalized communities, and I'm confident. And that confidence comes from being an American. I'm confident that I can pretty much do anything, and I can be anything. Not just president, because I was not born here.
Oh, we can change the law for you.
Thank you very much. I like that.
Also, we can find birth certificates.
Thank you for that very lecture and very good information. I'm asking about the in a matter of countries which in crisis like Syria. What about the temporary protection status? It was issued last year, but things are getting worse in Syria, and more people are expelling from the country. So, what are the measures, and what about the efforts to reissue this temporary protection status for the Syrian citizens here living in America? Because there are more Syrians coming here and fighting for protection from the very tough conditions there in Syria. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for raising that, because I've been really involved in the Syrian effort, and because I'm also chair of the Golden Dog Coalition, which works on issues of refugees. And we wrote several letters to President Obama around this issue. I am of the opinion that all Syrians here got to have the temporary protected status, and put them on the path to having green card, because they can't really go by. But more importantly, we have to make sure that, as we have indicated in some of the letters I sent to President Obama, that we have to increase our support for the Syrian people. It got to be humanitarian support, but it got to be political support, because if we do not address the political situation there, then it's going to be hard for us to even predict the number of people who would be displaced by this situation. It's really tragic, and I think that temporary protection is the right thing to do, and we will always defend it for anyone who is coming. But ultimately, I think that we have to make sure that our administration here, especially President Obama, understands that we need to be on the right side of history to stand with the people of Syria at this very critical juncture. But I'm clearly one who is in support of temporary protected status. TPS comes in handy for this, just like in several conditions. When the earthquake happened in Haiti, we fought for TPS there, and the Haitians have that today. We have Somalis having it, and I think that it's the right thing to do. And hopefully with this immigration reform, it will help those on TPS to have a faster path towards permanent residency, in other words, green card, instead of waiting for a decade.
Yes. Thank you. What about the issue of new temporary protection status? Because now it's closed. There is no the period for temporary protection status maybe ended in last September.
You mean
till
the
now?
registration?
Yes, the registration for TPS.
Oh, okay, that's
It's ended till now, and no opportunity now for any Syrian to apply for TPS.
Oh, no, that's a different situation. I was
Yeah.
not aware that the date ended. That could
Yes.
be done administratively, and I'll be glad to talk to you afterwards on that and see what the Golden Dog Coalition can do.
Yes.
Especially if we have a good reasoning of why those people could not meet the deadline.
Yes,
Okay?
thank you.
But that's an administrative decision. We can target the Department of Homeland Security and the State Department, see what we can do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how many of us here are immigrants?
Everybody?
That's why I say this is America around here.
Yeah, we all support you.
Thank you. Support me, there I win, right? Thank you. That's all.
I thought in the topic that would be of interest to everyone.
That's right.
But America is the country of immigrants.
Immigrant, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, but it knows how to do it better because it has done it for 400 or so years or longer. The countries that right now are coping with immigrations never expected to be immigrants
Well,
countries like most of Europe,
that's
which
right.
used to be homogenous
Yes.
and didn't didn't expect a lot of strangers to come in, so they don't have yet the legal and the cultural background to handle this well. They will learn, and probably in less than 400 years, because we may not have 400 years.
Yeah, good comment. You know, that's why we should really be the ones setting the example for Europe now, the old Europe. You know, dealing with globalization, which comes with immigration.
Time for one more question. Last one.
Great. Oh yeah. Okay, Brother Muhammad.
I enjoyed your remarks very much. You made an excellent case for moving a social issue forward. Your idea of leadership and vision and strategy, right out of Harvard Business School.
Yeah,
very good. But you also made a remark early on about not just winning the political battle, but changing people's hearts and minds. You used the word righteousness several times. And I think it's very important for us to not just win political battles, but convince the people that don't believe, that aren't with us, that we are righteous in our cause. Bring them over, because that's the I think solution to long-term social peace is not to have political fights, but to have a consensus about what the right thing is to do.
I agree with you. You know, that's exactly the point I was making. It's often when we are engaged in this struggle for social justice, we tend to become mechanical. We're only looking at what issues we want to move, and once we get it, we forget that. Wait a minute. If we had 65 people voting with us, you know, and we still have 35 against us, we have to figure out, you know, how to get them to understand that it's not a zero-sum game, and we should listen to them. And that is why this work is ongoing. You know, I really think that the victories you've gotten so far only set the stage for the hard work ahead. And that's why I say immigrant integration. How do you create welcoming communities? How do you ensure that people start to look at their neighbors differently? That is a whole new area of work for us, you know, and we have to pay attention to that. Sometimes you win by the tiniest of margins. You can say, hallelujah, we got it, we pass it. But you have the 49%. We're just going to wait for their movement to reverse it. If you do not work with them to change their minds and change their hearts, that is why this got to be a multi-level strategy. I always tell my colleagues, I say, I am not in this to just count votes. I am in this to see that we change in heart and minds, because that is the best guarantee for the result that we have achieved.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Dr. Alie Kabba to present to you a token of our appreciation. Thank you so much for being here.
Surprised.
She's not immigrant, she's a citizen, she was born here.
Are you going to vote for me? Right?
Okay, thank you very much for your efforts to make immigrants.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Yes, thank you very much.
I enjoyed this